Okay, so some of you were here for the first part. Some of you are kind of more newer. Um, the presentation is going to be Guide to Teaching with OER. So I'm Saadia Khan, for those anyone who does not yet know me. So science faculty, grant recipient for OER, and I'm also co-authoring with Vince, another Illinois OER grant, and kind of advocator of like all OER textbooks. Saying that, we are proud to have like all our chemistry courses with zero learning cost. I think we have like two of them still inclusive. Well, we are working on that one. So if all of you want to introduce each other.
Sure. Shakina Lawrence, library.
I'm Vince Radel in chemistry, science.
Okay, so I think I'm kind of like going to skip those questions because of like. Okay, so one of my passions in teaching is to have affordable, if possible, zero cost learning for students. What I can do from my side is to at least have zero cost learning materials. Unfortunately, this probably the college will throw me out if I said zero cost tuition. So my part, I kind of I'm advocating for as much as possible zero to no cost learning materials for students. The basis for this is also in our Human Declaration of Rights. I think that was passed in 1973 to 78, where higher education shall be equally accessible to all, and we are still struggling where higher education is not accessible to a lot of students who want to be the students. Uh, we will review it quickly about what OER stands for. We will work on different types of licenses. We went over it in the previous one. I'm just going to give a quick overview of it, and I'm going to talk more about how we can replace the traditional books with OER resources. So if you can look at the graph from 1993 to 1923, like in a kind of a 2 decade span, the difference between the tuition cost or tuition funding and also the state funding has gone quite high. Initially, as you can see, there was your tuition, and the state funding was quite enough that it was able to provide a lot of students. So if you think back, and probably a generation ahead of us, they were not graduating with crippling debts as we or our kids have graduated. So that discrepancy is keeping on increasing as the time goes on. So what can we do to help our students? Yes, there are a lot of monetary grants for the students. For example, in Illinois, MAP grant is kind of it's pretty good, and it helps. If you look at the uh, data from 2002 to 2023, in 2002 it was kind of covered like 100% of the students who received the grant. Now less than 50% is being covered by the grant. So there's still 44% where the students are not able to cover it. And most of the time that kind of comes down to the learning material cost. So the tuition is covered, or they get some funding for the tuition, they take the loan for the tuition, but the learning material cost is the one that kind of puts the burden on the students. So here is another, and with reference to just the community colleges, this is with all the public universities, and this is just in reference to the community colleges. As you can see, this kind of like the 55% is not covered by MAP. Any questions? So what's the solution? One of the things that we can do is to have open education resources to cover these learning material costs. Or what is open education resources? The definition under quotes for it is open education resources are teaching, learning, and research materials in any medium. They can be digital or otherwise, and that resides in the public domain. You can use it as permitted with no cost involved for the user, and adapt it, redistribute it by others with limited restrictions or no restrictions. So OER stands for Open Educational Resources. Your open is free to use, openly licensed, allowing anyone to retain, use, remix, revise, or redistribute. You are still needed to give the initial attribute to the author, but you can redistribute, remix, sell it, as long as like you are within the means of the license that you're using for the OER. So what does the educational resources stand for? These educational resources are teaching, learning, and research resources. They can be textbook, they can be lab manuals, they can just be like chapters or notes that anyone has authored and anyone wants to put. It could be software, it could be images, it could be anything that is used in learning, videos, there could be the voice prompts. So we have, as the technology advances, we have a lot of materials we use for student learning. Those can be the simulations, those could be the virtual experiments that students do. So those all come under the educational resources. So the goal was to equip everyone with tools and techniques and strategies to build, sustain open education initiatives in your own courses. Well, but I think we have another expert here. So there are different types of materials that are available to use as course materials. Are there costs to these materials involved? Anyone?
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, it can be pretty expensive though.
Yeah.
So initially, there are costs to those materials that are being developed, because an author is writing, printing, time, energy. So yes, there are costs involved, but the user is not the one who's paying those costs. It's normally paid by the institutions, or other monetary funds are being allotted to overcome these costs. Are they open?
Once they're finished.
Yeah, so yes, they are open. That means you can use, reuse, remix, and do that. So fully open, they are kind of the 5 R criteria that we'll just go over in a little bit. They are open repositories for these materials where anyone with the internet can access them. They are open access. That means they are published and accessible all around the world. The web content is, if it is as a web content, is freely available online, and some may have CCC license, like Creative Commons license. Again, library content, the purchased content for the institutional use by faculty and students, those are also coming under your educational resources. But again, some of them might not have Creative Commons licenses, just some might be copyrighted. So when you are using the material that is available to you, not for cost, just that does not mean that it is free or you can use it and change it. There might be the cost involved where the library is buying it or where the institution has bought the license. So it could be again your lecture notes that are available to the students. The faculty might be putting it on the LMS, but does not mean that he or she has licensed it under the creative license. So those small differences kind of do kind of make a difference, because if someone has actually put it as a Creative Commons license, depending on what kind of Creative Commons license they have used, you can consider it as open. If it's not licensed, that means it's still copyrighted. You will have to take the permission from the author, if permitted. So library course reserves, again, printed materials available to students who can use in the library may include access to quick purchase, to library content. Again, those have limited access. So students are using it, they're not paying it. So it's free to the students, so, but it's not under Creative Commons license. So inclusive access, these are publisher-based materials. Student is not really seeing that hit in the pocket. They're not buying it, but they are indirectly paying it for it as a fee because of it's covered under the tuition. The institutions are charging it along with the tuition. When they have the inclusive access to these publisher materials, they have the access to it for a limited amount of time. For the semester, most likely they are doing it, and uh, the students apparently in some places can opt out, but they will miss out on the quizzes and other things that are there. For at Triton, I don't know if the students can opt out. Students don't opt out, at least now, not in my class. So there are online platforms such as the Red Shelf or White Resource that sell e-text directly to the students. Uh, that may include OER text also. Purchased print material, they are copyrighted but are shareable. Access code content, access for one person to the online content includes printed text online. They can be used by multiple people if it is a uh, course-wide access, depending on, or it's a personal license that's involved. Again, different types. Student is not immediately seeing that cost to them, but not all of them are openly be licensed. So currently, like offered as inclusive courses, unfortunately, this is not from the data from our college. It is from the community college member bookstore. The prices are range for those books from 63 to 123 per course, and this probably is more for the inclusive access cost material. That means it's an e-text and publisher material that they can access online and do during homework, during their learning. So the data is for a community college. If we are kind of looking at it as a college with a similar student body as ours, we are asking our students to buy textbooks or ranging between 63 to 123, $125. So what is the message that we are giving them? What is the message we are giving our students when we are expecting our students to buy a 63 to $125 book per course or learning material per course? When our students are struggling with two jobs or one job, they are full-time working, they are non-traditional students with family and other familial responsibilities.
And they can't afford it, and they maybe should just not pursue education.
Or they have to make a really critical choice.
Yeah.
Like, am I going to choose between groceries
Yeah.
or this one, well, imaginary book?
No, actually, like, till we used our OER book, our textbook costed around like $60 to $100. Like we said them, hey, you can rent it or use an older edition. Still, it's kind of mostly similar. But the lab manual, they needed to buy it as a new original book, which was 59 to, I think it went to up to like $65. So that's not an imaginary cost.
Well, no, it's not an imaginary cost. I'm saying that the inclusive access is typically an ebook.
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is they can't even hold the book in their hand.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So, solution? Open textbooks. So at least we cannot solve all the world problems, but we can eliminate like small things that are in our corner. By assigning open textbooks or by assigning open materials to our students, we are like giving them the idea that they do belong in my classroom, that they do belong in my institution. I do care about them. So I'm kind of working towards eliminating some of their affordability, being more inclusive, telling them that they belong in my classroom. So again, here also I have like some textbooks that are there: human nutrition, spatial planning practice, introduction to GIS. These are all chemistry. So uh, organic chemistry, general chemistry 1 and 2, our fundamentals chemistry, chemistry in society, and introduction to elementary chemistry. So all of the courses that we offer at Triton, we have the OER textbooks for it. As of this year, students do not see any material cost other than their goggles, which also we have kind of some of them as learners in case someone is not able to take it. So are they, if they are free, are they cheap? Are they not that great? No, these are peer reviewed, openly licensed, 100% free. Most of them it's not just chemistry, they are math, there's biology, there's anatomy, physiology, and there are other subjects too. So, how are we able to do it? So initially, if it is the regular textbook that you are taking it, it's the textbook. Uh, Publisher is the one publishing it. Authors are the ones who author it. Publisher pays the authors to author these textbooks, and they author the textbooks, and publisher publishes it. And every time a student is buying it, the publisher is getting the monies. Depending on the contract with the author gets some monetary values. Uh, what about the open books? When we are doing the open books, what it is your foundations, government, or other consortia are giving the colleges or universities, or the colleges and universities are giving it to the authors. So the author is getting compensated. It probably is not as much as the publisher would give it, but the authors are never getting compensated for the time and the resources that they are using in order to create these materials. So your university is responsible for the materials that these authors or the faculty or the subject matter experts are publishing it, and the student, they are giving it to the students. Many a times when a university is the one that's sponsoring it, it gets put into the LMS and is kind of just used by the students of that particular university or college. So whenever you see a C, that means all the copyrights are reserved. You, unless otherwise advised, you can probably just use that material for your own self. Depending on the material, if it is learning, there are certain materials which let the faculty use it for educational purpose for that particular class in which that's being used. So they can photocopy, they can add some annotations to it so as to help students understand. Your CC, when you see it, it's a Creative Commons license. They are Creative Commons license. They are different types of Creative Commons licenses. Uh, Under Creative Commons, it is free plus permissions, depending on the what type of permission it is, and it allows these licenses allow the teachers and students to freely use, copy, keep it, share it, mix it, or edit it. So what are these common licenses? Sorry. Okay. So those So those are attributions, BY, that means like, whenever you use these materials, you want to give the attribution to the author. Non-commercial, if there is a attribute of non-commercial up there, that means the faculty, students, or anyone who's using it can use it only for non-commercial purposes. You cannot take the material and say you are making a new book and you want to use the material from uh, the open education license. No, you can't use it. It has to be for all for non-commercial use. It can, like, you're using it for your class. Share alike, that means like, if I'm using a non open license textbook or open license material, open license graph, open license simulation, I need to be able to share, going forward, share my authored material in the similar fashion of share alike. I cannot say, okay, you know what, I have done this simulation, I don't want, everyone can use it, but I don't want it for only for non-commercial purposes. You cannot sell, you cannot like modify what I have created using someone else's uh, simulations for commercial purposes. So you got to share alike. No derivatives is you can use the material, but you cannot do any changes. Many times, like for example, someone has published the music, someone has published the song. If there's no derivatives, the song or the music has to be used in its original format. You cannot change or make changes to it. So that's kind of these are the open licenses that are involved. Many times it's not just one license. You can have like multiple license. Creative Commons by, that is like, just give the attribute. Creative Commons BY. So in all of them, like, it's you got to give the attribute to the author, but they can be share alike, no derivatives, non-commercial, share alike, or non-commercial, no derivative. So it can be a combination of all the other ones that are there. Questions? So I skipped the slide here. So with the Creative Commons, again, you still have this foundation, government, or consortia that is giving you the funding, or the universities are getting the funding from other external sources, and they're funding the author to author these learning materials. Authors or the university authors these learning materials, but rather than the fund like the previous one, where the university was letting its students only use these learning materials, textbooks, or lab manuals, now this textbook gets published as a Creative Commons book, which is not used not just by the students of that particular institution, but the students internationally worldwide. So what are the 5R activities that you can do when you publish your learning material under Creative Commons licenses? You retain that originally authored material. You can make it your own. You can control a copy of the resource. You can modify it. You can do more work on it and publish it as you like it, as long as you are giving the attribution to the original author. Then you can reuse it, the resource for as is for any purpose. You can, it could be teaching. You can print the printed copies, go out and sell it. So again, attribute needs to be given. The money you can keep it, but the attribute needs to be given there. So revise, you can alter, adapt, change, improve, translate, or the resource. You can remix it, combining combine it with the other resources. For example, the textbook. We have different organic, inorganic, and the general chemistry textbooks that we use. Many of those we are not like 100% happy with it. So maybe in future we can use different resources and remix those textbooks so as we can have it like more comprehensive one that is has the case studies which are similar, where the students images are more similar to our student body, where the case studies kind of are more in line with our students' life, not somewhere like something happening in Sweden or Australia, but what actually is happening in their everyday life, so they can relate to it and have the learning materials in the order in which we teach them. So we can remix those to make and create something new, which is more in line with our learning goals. And redistribute the original, revised, and remixed version to the sources so we can publish it where it can be used by similar-minded other faculties. Any questions? So faculty adoptions, what do we need to be aware about? Again, first thing, awareness that whenever you pick the learning materials, whenever you pick a textbook, whenever you are assigning the textbooks, whenever you are adapting anything for your course, make sure to find something which is having low cost. Sometimes it's not possible to have like an open education resource for it. Sometimes it's not possible that if you are created a course, so immediately to have something available for it, which has no cost. But when you're using it, when you're assigning it, please have the awareness that you're assigning a cost to it. Right away, you're saying, hey, you don't belong in my class if you cannot pay this. Education. So you are providing access for the education, not only for your students, but for the students worldwide, and you're engaging them in your course content. So not only by adopting, you are encouraging, expanding the educational awareness to your students, but also you're doing it with the fellow colleagues and the other faculty all around. So some of the adapted books that you will see is physics. So it's not just has like the textbooks that you're getting. Faculty have started publishing the student resources with it. So students getting started guide, there's a solution guide just like they would get with the publisher material. There is kind of time management guide for it. There are also resources available for instructors. There are PowerPoints involved with it. There are some sample syllable language. There are solutions for the practice problems. It's not as comprehensive as a publisher material would be, because you have to keep in mind it also there is at the back end a faculty member or a subject matter expert who is working on it without much of the remuneration that a publisher would give in order for these materials to be finished. There is someone just like you on the other end who is, along with their full-time job, is also taking care of this and publishing it for the good of education. So there are third-party resources available. Unfortunately, I'm not sure how many of them are free, how many of them are, again, have the cost. But I've been told the cost is not as much as like you would do when you're buying the access materials. This can again be turned into inclusive. So a lot of publishers are kind of jumping into the bandwagon of having extra resources or extra help with the open education resources. So you're here apparently you're interested in OER, and I had this kind of worksheet activity where you could look and define your own needs. So I think both of you. That's the second page. Defining your goals. If it is like for a whole textbook, you are looking to replace something, you are looking to just add to your textbook material, or are you looking to just look at some topics? One thing you have to be careful is whenever you're searching for these material, make sure you take a note down for what kind of prompt you're using it. Otherwise, you will be reinventing the wheel all the time, all over again. Because today, okay, I kind of searched it with organic chemistry, say, uh, alkene reactions. If I'm going to like search for it again, like a month later, 6 months later, something might not have come up. So you want to be able to take down the notes for keep in mind what format, what words you have used when you are doing these searches. So that like you're using a different type or a derivation of it or something changed, not having it same. So there are different resources that you can use for publishing or like searching that. There is a Carly repository with Open Illinois Initiative. There are textbooks and pamphlets that were provided by Carly. There are, if you look at the other page, there are different websites where you could search for the learning materials that you are interested in. So first, go to the different. You can go to different repositories that are there. Search for it. Search the OER resources that are provided for it. If not, like go to our library liaison. They are really good with it, and they are always happy to assist you. So the other one is like to identify and evaluate. If you are not sure if you want to adapt an OER book, one other thing that you can do is search up your subject matter and go and do a review of that. Find different textbooks that are there, different learning materials. Go and look for what you need, what you're looking for, and do a review for it. So that you have an idea of what's there, what quality material is there, and also it will be helpful to as a feedback to the material that's there so that they can adapt and they can develop it a little bit more. So you can review the materials, and that's kind of like your peer reviewing it. So many of the textbooks, standardized books that we talked about earlier, physics, math, and all, these are peer reviewed. So and you can check for the accuracy of the content because you are the subject matter expert in that particular field. You can see how it aligns with your own course objectives because when you're reviewing something, you go a little bit more in depth of it rather than just glancing through it. And if it's something that needs to be changed, if it's not appropriately aligned, you can again remix it to according to your needs. If you review it, you know what, like, I'm reviewing this book, like first 3 chapters are kind of like just what I think. It would have been like something that I would write. But the rest of the chapters are not. There might be a third book that kind of works for like, chapter 7 to chapter 9, just the way you would like it or by some revision. So you can take different sections from the different textbooks. Even if you do not have the bandwidth right now to remix it, you can just choose from 3 different sections, putting it in the textbooks, putting it in your LMS, and teach your course. So you are not having to, it's just because it's kind of a matter of length. Students are not buying the textbook. they are using those learning materials. Yes, in some cases where students need a hard copy, I would love a hard copy when I get it. But when they are having the hard copies, or that's kind of when it becomes a problem. Most of these open education resources can be downloaded as a PDF copies. So if the students are needing some sections, they can print it out. And they can just print out that particular PDF copies. So right wherever you can, the subject matters, you might want to use it. So if there is a technical quality you need a clear license, you're not sure about the licensing, just talk to the library liaison. They are very pretty good in kind of removing the fluff from the actual material and letting you know what and needs to be done further. If you are having technical difficulties, kind of like IT will be happy to assist you to put it into the LMS. Uh, who do you need to consult or inform if you are going to be using the open education resources? Probably a department chair and other faculty also who are teaching it. You just don't want to like unilaterally, I'm going to be teaching in the open education resources. Probably so and so has told me to advocate for it. Then you want to make sure you have the accessibility taken care of also. If you're again not sure, CAS in the Learning Commons is there to answer the questions. They are in the B building, A building. So how will the students access these resources? Again, you can decide for yourself. How are they accessing? Are they going to an external website every time they want to study the textbook? Have you downloaded those particular chapters and included it in your modules or your LMS? Uh, Again, are you just downloading those PDF copies, printing them out, and having them package it in the bookstore as the textbook and selling it? So different, there are different means where different universities and colleges have done it differently because in some courses where they have older generation or a lot of students who want hard copies, especially with uh, special needs students. They want a hard copy. They cannot always want to use it digitally. So in those cases, these were printed and packaged it for those courses. So again, individual needs, individual courses. I thought this worksheet kind of will help streamline the faculty, what they are wanting, what they are needing it. Is anything available for them to be able to use it immediately? Any suggestions? I would be happy to take them. Any questions? So where do we begin the search? The main question. These websites are also, I think, are located at open textbooks. A lot of those pictures with physics, chemistry, those are the open stacks, open textbooks that are there. There is a growing collection of 20 to 1,230 textbooks, and they are used, adapted. You can remix your own, and uh, OpenStax and LibreText publishes it according to the colleges. So all the colleges textbooks can be students can freely see it also in one place. There's OSS that searches across the multiple repositories, and OER Commons has also covers various disciplines. So here is OpenStax, Morlot, Mason OER MetaFinder. It kind of searches over various repositories all over at the same time. Uh, you have OER Commons, Google's Advanced Search, Pressbook Directory, then I think Duo Books. I have not used that. So again, a lot of this research is from open education network that so that's the research that's coming from. Then we also have it based on the subjects. Uh, LibreText, we use it extensively for and also reference it in chemistry. So this list is there in the handout that I've just passed. If anyone is interested to look for it. So Open Education Network kind of also publishes different textbooks on its website, and currently it has textbooks based on different subjects. I think there are like a few more since this was published. So it has like 1,230 textbooks that it is published. You can publish, when you remix it, you can publish your book at more than one site, or you can publish it on one side and have it linked from the other sites. So what are you doing by this? You are according to Goplan and Brady, when they published in 2019, racially minoritized and first generation students at four-year institutions are less inclined to feel that same sense of belonging compared to their peers at two-year institutions. That is because in four-year institutions, they are kind of just getting lost in their peers. Whereas by adapting expensive textbooks and learning materials, we psychologically and psychically send messages to our students in terms of who belongs and who does not belong in your class, based on the need to be buying $100 or more textbooks and for more for the learning material. So you're immediately sending them, hey, you know what? I know you're struggling in your life, but sorry, you don't belong here. So again, the article is coming from there. So students who are encouraged to feel that they belong are more likely to complete their first year than the ones who are not. So this also helps us with the retention of our students and their graduation rate. So the first page kind of helps you reflect on the barriers you might think you're going to face if you want to adapt open textbooks. So initially I was told there were 5 people, so I was like, for one would be me, two and two in the table. You can talk and discuss among yourself. First, write it down, what you think might be the barriers, and then discuss it with your group, and then we'll talk. But I guess you can just write it.
I have some ideas about that.
Okay.
About the barriers. One of the biggest barriers we've observed is just the time barrier. I mean, with our instructors, you already are working full time and teaching full time. And so it already takes time to prepare your classes, search for materials, but to have to consider to actually create or remix materials is a lot of extra time.
Yeah, as I said, we have adapted those, but we are not having the bandwidth to remix anything. But again, the faculty, the onus will be on you as like the library liaison, that you can just suggest them to pick one chapter at a time, since they're not really buying that book. So that way they can cherry pick whichever chapter they want from wherever they want. When they're ready to remix and create, or maybe they can have help from library, where someone can be there to help us remix and recreate it, where we cherry pick the materials. So don't have to go for the whole thing. Just start by one chapter, one unit, one learning objective in that unit at a time.
Which is perfect. You're right. So now we go to awareness, right? So a lot of times what we are trying to do with the library is bring all the materials into one place. So we have a subject guide, OER, lots of repositories, lots of information, trying to simplify finding the information. And so the hope is once we can um, create more awareness, like you mentioned earlier, then there would be.
Is the subject matter thing available online?
So
I
the way
that's right.
the subject guide is, it's a general guide for OER, and then it has different layers to it, like understanding what it is, understanding Creative Commons, and then there's one portion of the guide that is like a link farm of repositories.
Mhm. I think I have the link
Yes.
to our library here.
And
So-
so the creation of awareness amongst our peers was the first attempt to try to help everyone understand that we were trying to give them as much information as possible. And then helping them understand exactly what you said. You don't have to do a full book. You can start small, you can begin. The biggest question is whether or not the ancillaries would be available. And showing them, yes, these are available as well.
I mean, like,
So-
yes, initially they're not available. Frankly speaking, there are some that are available, they're not available in all. So
More are being,
more are being. They can be the one
Right.
who would publish the ancillaries. So that's why they don't have to convert it at the same time. Like that way they can be legally, technically using the publisher material to teach their classes, and still like slowly adapt while they are changing it one at a time. Another thing to help you with the awareness is to have the statement book adoption time. Like, hey, you know what sense of belongingness are we sending to our students? Like, if you have that somewhere in your library saying are we being telling our students that they belong in our class, that kind of might be helpful too. Don't want to be pushy, but
We want to make sure that we
Are
appear
not
as
rude, yeah.
partners, right?
I
So,
understand.
yes, but I agree. I mean, we want to just kind of continue to keep pushing the message out there and being available when people are ready to adopt the mindset to begin the process. That's where we are in our position is we want to be ready when you're ready. So that's what we're.
Do you have any suggestions, Vince?
No. No, I think I agree with everything that's being said here because it's, the biggest issue that happens, I think, is that, you're so used to and you've invested so much in already using your textbook that it's hard to undo that.
Yeah.
It really takes a big leap.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was like, start with one unit, one learning objective at a time, and see what's out there. So all of us just reading one time or other, we can actually do it something with our subject matter and adapt it. So that's the best part about I find about the OER. I don't have to take the onus of I'm changing the textbook. I have to use at least 80 to 90% of the chapters because I changed and I made my students buy that book.
Right.
So uh, again, it's kind of just with going with that worksheet where you're able to locate OER site for your topic or your subject matter where you're successful in locating the ancillaries. Uh, Again, ancillaries you might not find it because what again we all do is we develop our own ancillaries and we keep it for ourselves. We are not putting it out in the repository. So again, every instructor, every faculty member is reinventing that wheel. So you will not find a lot of ancillaries out there. There are some, but not all. Did this exercise help you understand the challenges? All of your experts. So uh, what do you think the student issues regarding these materials might be if they are?
Well, just making sure that they understand how to access it. think that would be the biggest barrier. But once they have clarity on how to get it, if it's from you, the instructor directly, or if it's in the LMS, I think that the students would love it. And our research and surveys have suggested that. So the first round of OER grant funded creation that happened in 2021, we were required to survey the students to see how did they feel about it. And overwhelmingly, the students were appreciative and hopeful that they could find more classes that were offering OER, and felt like the professor did have a sense of belonging for them because they chose that type of way too. So the students receive it well, as you would imagine, because they know what materials cost. I do have a question about the ancillaries though.
Mhm.
I'm wondering, and maybe this isn't a question to be answered here, but do you think perhaps instructors don't post their ancillaries because maybe they make the assumption that their class is so uniquely individual that another class is just going to use different ancillaries anyway? Or is there a concern about perhaps if they post their ancillaries and they continue to use them, that future students may find them on the repositories? And
I mean, like, we most of the instructors that we do it in on a LMS. Other than like the exam material or quiz material, all the if they're using PowerPoints, it is posted on LMS. So students have it.
right,
They can download it and, like, share it with their peers.
right.
One of the things that is there is that probably the instructors have like spent quite a bit of time creating that. So not all of them post it because again, it's not grant funded.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is like, you're right that there's an assumption that, the way I teach is not the way someone else teaches. So I prepare my slides, my presentation materials to it's tailored to the way I teach the material, right? So I am under the assumption, well, there's a couple things. One, I'm under the assumption that other instructors may not get much out of it because they teach a very different way. And also, just the way it's done, I would have to explain, what I'm doing here, and, explain, you have to give the backstory for everything that you're presenting as an ancillary. Otherwise, you end up doing like what publishers do to make their, their PowerPoint presentations that you can download with the textbook, which is basically a very verbose outline of the chapter. And that's not what most professors present, because it's just impossible to get through that material that way. And it doesn't help the students at all.
Right.
So.
Okay, so again, some licensing considerations and selecting the licensing types. I think we are not going. We have time. So again, standard copyrights include the liabilities that apply to when the source materials are used in a way not permitting. Even with the CCC licenses, you have to be careful and make sure you look at what the original license was, where the material is coming from. Maybe you might have to look like a second, because the person in between the original author and you might have used the license incorrectly. So make sure you're going up to the source and doing it just because it's a CCC license. Yeah, I got some material. Sometimes it's share alike, sometimes it's no derivative. So you've got to be careful and make sure. So faculty can accidentally violate the copyrights simply because they do not understand the permissions of one source to another. So again, as faculty, unfortunately, it falls many times on us, not the middleman who had revised it or remixed it. best to decide is to use the very beginning of the development process. Again, different sites for learning about the content. Again, contact the librarian at the Triton College if you have more questions.
Yes, please.
So just the website without all those verbose materials. I know sometimes, like, looking at those things, I skip them. So I thought that this kind of would be just like, short. You might not be able to view it, but Lara has a PowerPoint and she can do it. So giving the attributes to where most of the materials in here came by, any slides, any diagrams, any research is from Creative Commons, Carly, Open Education Network.
Thank you.
Questions?
Excellent, excellent. I'm sorry,
Welcome.
I got too
Thank you, Saadia.
You're welcome.
It was great. Thank you.